You're listening to the Hog Sports Network Daily Podcast. Now, here's your host, Matt Jones.
Happy Friday to you. We appreciate you being with us as we count down to Arkansas's game against UAB over at Razorback Stadium. It'll be at 3:15 Saturday on SEC Network. Today on the show, Ethan Westerman will join me in studio. We'll talk about the game. We'll give our predictions not only for Arkansas-UAB but around the SEC this weekend. We'll also talk Razorback baseball after the 2025 schedule was released Thursday. Lots of fun matchups for Dave Van Horn's teams. But we begin today with Aaron Murray. He's a former Georgia All-SEC quarterback. He'll be on the call with Dave Neal and Ashley Shaw-Amati on the SEC Network for Saturday's broadcast of the game. Aaron, we appreciate you being with us.
Yeah, man, appreciate having me on. Excited to get out to Fayetteville. Always enjoyed my time out there. This will be, man, like my, I think, fourth time in the past 3 years coming out between spring games and games during the season, and always enjoy it and looking forward to another beautiful weekend.
I'm sure you've watched a lot of Arkansas's game against Oklahoma State, if not the whole game last weekend. As you watched film from that game, what were your thoughts on the Razorbacks?
Disappointment, honestly. I mean, I watched it live and I rewatched it again, just our coach's copy, so I can kind of get the whole thing. And, you know, Dave and I are watching it. We're in the booth getting ready for our game last week at Ole Miss. And we're just like, oh, man, like the momentum, and they look so good. And we're going to get obviously the announcers, like, we want to call really good games. We like teams that are undefeated, like all the spotlight. It just makes for a really fun broadcast. And obviously not saying that this isn't going to be a great time on Saturday, but it was just so disappointing to see a team that was dominating what it seemed like the entire three quarters of everything was going right. They looked fast on defense. I was really impressed with the defense. They looked fast on offense. They were throwing the ball well. They were running the ball well with Jackson and Talon. Receivers were making plays. Like it seemed like nothing could go wrong for Arkansas. And then things started to get sloppy with the turnovers, with the muff punts, with the missed field goals. Just everything that could have gone wrong seemed to go wrong, unfortunately, for Arkansas. And it just, to me, it somewhat dampened the momentum that could have been created, because you walk away from that game not only beating a ranked opponent in Oklahoma State, but looking that good. Like, you could not have played almost, besides, I think the pick six was in the first half. Besides the pick six, that first half was near dang perfect. I mean, it was just so efficient for year two with a new offense and a new quarterback to look that smooth was great. So it definitely feel like it dampened the momentum a little bit, and hopefully they can get it back this weekend versus UAB.
You mentioned momentum. I've talked to people who don't believe in momentum. There are people who believe strongly in it. I'm one of those, I guess, in the latter camp. I really believe in momentum, and it just felt like, and I wonder if you can kind of take us, being on the sideline in moments in your career, because it just feels like when something starts going wrong, it's like the train starts going downhill, and it's really hard to get it righted.
Well, you start pressing a little bit too, because then all of a sudden you're worried about losing another game, and then you start saying, like, oh man, we haven't even gotten to our SEC schedule yet. We haven't even played, in the toughest conference in America. So like, we need to start stacking wins now, and I think that the difference with last week when it comes to the whole momentum discussion was, if they would have won that football game, if they didn't make the mistakes that they made in that football game, it wasn't going to be a fluky win. So like, it was a win because you were the better football team. You were better than whatever they were ranked 13th or 17th, whatever Oklahoma State was. You were better than a top 15 team at that moment in America. And it wasn't because of some fluky things that happened. You dominated the football game. You dominated the line of scrimmage. You threw better. You ran better. You defended better. So you walk away from that as a football team and say, my goodness, that was awesome. Like, that is, if that's our potential, we are a top 20 team in America. We are a team that should not just be overlooked in the SEC. And you can build on that. And you can still build on it, because I think you can go back in and Sam Pittman say the message of, like, listen, we did dominate. We had almost double the yardage. If we don't do this, this, and this, and this game is a double-digit win. Like, we are good enough to compete in the SEC, no doubt about it. So you still get momentum. I just think, obviously, you walk away with a double-digit win without those mistakes. You're feeling really, really darn good going forward, against UAB this weekend, and then on the road against Auburn the following weekend.
Teams can be in games against much better teams, far superior teams. You can just have a fluky day. Somebody can have an off day. Somebody can have the best day of their life. Did you see a foundation from Arkansas that makes you think that they could be a solid team this year?
Well, it starts with the quarterback first. I mean, Arkansas hit a home run with Taylon Green. His and I think he's only going to get better and better. I did a little quarterback breakdown of Taylon from the game, and seeing obviously a lot of good. His legs. It's going to be very difficult for teams to bring man pressures because he sees the field so well. He sees the green grass and he can take off and run. I thought he threw the ball well at times, but there's some certain things with his footwork and timing that the more he's in the offense and the more he goes back and watches the tape, I believe he's going to get better. So if you're telling me that a guy that's been that efficient through 2 weeks has so much more juice left to be squeezed out of him, I'm like, that's a dangerous quarterback. He's always going to be one of the best athletes on the field. He's always going to be fast. You couple that with what looks to be an improved offensive line. I really like Jackson at the running back position, the transfer from Utah. You got some good receivers that have matured from a year ago, and Petrino calling the plays. It's a better system and a better fit than what we saw last year as well too. So but it goes back to Green first. If he is serious about getting better and can learn from some of the small, I'm talking about like small little detail mistakes that he had in last week's game, I think the kid could be pretty darn special. And if you can build around your quarterback with those other pieces that I alluded to, this is an offense that's going to be great. And then you flip it to the other side of the defense. I thought the defense has performed really well for the past 2 weeks. Kind of fell off a little bit in the second half yet last week, but you can really see Travis Williams in this new year. Those guys really buying in, and they got some better pieces.
When you see an offense has 648 yards and basically lived on the Oklahoma State side of the field, but they only come away with 31 points, what are your thoughts?
Details. That's all it is. It's small details. The amount of times, like even the interception. So they're running some sort of mesh concept with the interception, and mesh as a quarterback, you could do one of two footworks. You could do like a big three with a hitch, or you could do like a quick five. If you watch Taylon, he did a 5-step drop. I wouldn't say it was super slow, but it wasn't very quick. But he sat at about 10.5 yards back in the backfield. And as a quarterback, you're taught, like, if I'm going to take a 5-step drop, I can't sit back here because that's not good for the tackles. Like a tackle cannot protect if the quarterback's 10 yards in depth in the backfield. You got to hit your back step and you got to get up. That's why like the quick five will get you about 9, 8.5, 9. So it gives you another room and a half for the tackle to protect on the outside. He was too deep. He didn't hitch up. Then all of a sudden you get a defender that's able to deflect the football and then it pops up for an interception, pick six. Like that small detail changed momentum in the game right there where you're not getting points inside the plus territory. A couple other times where he's just late making a decision. There's one on a corner route, which is a beautiful run ball route, I think by Satenga, and he's late on it. It's a nice completion down the field, but could have been a 70-yard touchdown. So once again, like this goes back to he had a good game. He's had a good 2 weeks. Can we get to the small details to elevate his game within the system? And then you're getting more touchdowns instead of turnovers and field goals in the red area.
You were on a couple of teams that played against Bobby Petrino when you were at Georgia. You started that 2010 game down in Athens. I know you played on offense, but do you remember anything about maybe the way your coaches tried to scheme against him? And what do you think makes him so effective as a coordinator? Because these numbers that Arkansas is putting up, maybe other than not being efficient enough scoring points at Oklahoma State, these yardage numbers have been pretty impressive through 2 games.
Well, they want to spread you out, and it comes down to players too. Like, and I think he's a tremendous coordinator. I love the schematics. I love the way he's motioning guys and getting guys open. But I just think overall, Arkansas this year, at least it looked like that on the tape last week, just is improved in a lot of positions. They're improved at line. They're improved at quarterback. They're improved at the running back position. Luke Haas in year 2 of being a college football player at the tight end position is going to be improved. Going to be one of the better tight ends in the SEC. And then the receivers looked improved as well too. And it's just the system fits the personnel better than what they were trying to do last year, going a little bit more pro style, which was still a little head scratching because I was at the spring. I guess I did have the spring game last year. At the spring game and watching the practice before the game, and trying to get KJ to do drops in their center and all that. Just like you got to play to the strengths of what your players are, and you have a mobile quarterback, you have a really talented running back, and you got some talented receivers and a tight end. Finding ways to move those guys around and get matchups, allow your quarterback to get on the run at times as well too. So I think he just does a good job of understanding the personnel, putting those guys in a situation to go out there and ball out. And I remember the times that we played him when he was at Arkansas previously. They had Ryan Mallett. So what do you have? You have a big quarterback with a big arm, not mobile, but can push the ball vertically down the field. And that's what you saw the offense do, push the ball down the field. And I remember seeing some of the throws my redshirt year that Mallett was making, be like, my goodness, like deep outs, deep comebacks. You played to the strengths of your guys, and through first 2 weeks he's doing that.
We talked about Talon Green. What about Jacob Zeno, the UAB quarterback? What are your evaluations of him?
Yeah, I mean, he's a good quarterback, can make plays just like Talon, with his legs and his arm too. They've struggled a little bit to start the season with protection. I think that's been the biggest issue for them. It's hard to play quarterback when you can't get through your reads. They got some talented tight receivers, excuse me. They like to rotate the backs. They got 3 good guys. They feel like they can get in and out. I think they got a really good tight end. This Terrell McDonald kid, number 10. They'll move him around a little bit too. He'll be like a fullback. They'll get like this wing T formation. They'll flex him out. They'll get him in route. He's a good blocker. He's a really good utility player that I think they're going to want to get him more touches throughout the season. But they got good skill. They got a good tight end. They got some decent running backs. They got a quarterback that I think makes really good decisions in the short, intermediate game. It's hard for them to push the ball vertically down the field with the lack of protection that he's been getting through the first 2 weeks. So if they are able to, protect him, I think they can make some plays, but I think that's going to be a tall task for UAB going against, this Arkansas defensive line.
Arkansas is a 24.5-point favorite in this game, but we saw last week Oklahoma, they struggled as a big favorite against Houston. Notre Dame, they lost to Northern Illinois as a big favorite, so nothing's given. I wonder from your experience, though, being in a locker room where you're expected not only to win, but to win big, how does that affect your preparation and maybe your focus going into a game like this?
I would always look at it as, because I know a lot of fans would always say, like, oh, they're looking ahead to next week. They're looking ahead to next week. It's on the road against Auburn. SEC play starts next week. So Arkansas is going to be looking to that. I always would try to trick myself and be like, hey, like my goal in this game, this is when we play, supposed try and blow out a team game, was I'm going to throw 5 touchdowns. I'm not going to play the second half. So like I was focused in because I wanted to have a big stat game, and then I wanted my backup to play. So like I wasn't looking ahead to next week. I wanted 5 touchdowns, and I wanted to take the second half off so Hudson, could get out there and do his thing. So like that was always my mentality in these games. So I was always, zoned in, locked in. I knew my responsibilities. I knew the coverages. I knew the, how our plays were going to work versus theirs. So like I don't think players are necessarily looking ahead. I think they want to go out there. They want to perform. I think if a lot of them are looking at it as a possibility to have some highlight moments, to create some big plays. But like you have your process as a player. Like, like Sunday's rehab, Monday's, getting into the tape really, and first and second down, and Tuesday's kind of the same thing, and Wednesday's third down, and Thursday's red zones. Like you have your week, you have your routine essentially. You're not going to just randomly just get off routine and start watching film on Auburn on Friday just because you're going to look past UAB. Like, no, you're going to do the game. Then you're going to go do rehab on Sunday, get your body right, get a workout in, maybe start a little tape, and then Monday, go to your routine from there for the rest of the week. So I don't anticipate Arkansas overlooking UAB. I think they're going to come in there focused. Obviously, UAB is going to look at this as an opportunity to go into an SEC stadium and have a big win. And as a broadcaster, I'm hoping it's a good game.
You've got that Georgia helmet there over your shoulder. They looked really good against Clemson a couple of weeks ago. How good do you think that team is this year? And who are the big challengers that you see for them in the SEC?
Their entire schedule is a grind. In 3 weeks. So they got the game this weekend versus Kentucky. I think they'll take care of business. And then they got the bye week, and then, they have to go on the road to Tuscaloosa. They got to go on the road to, Texas. They got to go on the road to go play Ole Miss, and then they got to play Tennessee at home. So I think all those teams are playoff teams. Like I had Ole Miss last week. It's a really good football team. Like that is a playoff team. That's a team that's going to be probably 11-1. Texas is an 11-1, 12-0 football team. Alabama's still Alabama. Tennessee looks like a 10-2, 11-1 football team. You have to play all of them in one season. And like at the end of the year, we're going to look back and say, I know the ACC is weak, but Clemson's probably going to be 10-2, 11-1. And I'm not like trying to make any excuses for Georgia, but like it is a hell of a schedule that they're going to have to go through. So, they've built some really good depth. They're very talented on offense. They're very talented on defense. Their special teams is really good. Like there isn't any weakness, but it's still a daunting schedule. And kind of what held them back last year was injuries. You got to stay healthy. That's always going to be the key. But yeah, they are 100% a contender and probably one of the best two teams in America right now.
And the great thing for Georgia and pretty much any team that is good this year is that there's some wiggle room now with the expanded playoff. I mean, Georgia was probably the best team in the country last year, but they have one slip off or slip up, and they don't get to make the playoff. There's some room there to maybe not have your best every week now.
Which is great because, I mean, like, go back to schedule. Like, you can afford to lose in Austin. You can, afford to, lose to Ole Miss. I think the committee at the end of the day will be like, okay, as long as those are close games, Georgia's 10-2. They may not be in Atlanta, but they'll definitely be one of the 12 teams in the playoffs. And then if they're in the playoffs, they're still probably the most talented team in the playoffs. So you don't have to be perfect. Obviously, you want to because you want to get one of those top 4 seeds. So you get the bye and all that, and continue to build the confidence. But yeah, like you could. Then this is the beauty of college football in today's age, and I hope more schedules get to be as exciting as Georgia's, is because you can afford to play harder non-conference games. You can afford to play even harder conference games because you know that hey, 10-2 or hell at 9-3 maybe some years you're going to have a chance to get into the playoffs.
Aaron, it's been great talking with you. Hope you have a safe trip up here to Fayetteville this weekend and enjoy your trip.
Appreciate it. Y'all have a great weekend.
All right, thank you. Aaron Murray of SEC Network. He'll be on the call Saturday for the Razorbacks game against UAB. When we come back, we'll talk Razorback baseball. The schedule's out for 2025. We'll also have a conversation with Ethan Westerman a little bit later about this game between the Razorbacks and UAB. But first, a word from our sponsors.
LPGA Week in Northwest Arkansas returns September 23rd through the 29th for the 18th consecutive year. Watch former Razorbacks and 2024 Olympians Maria Fassi and Gabby Lopez compete against the world's best female golfers at the Walmart Northwest Arkansas Championship, presented by P&G at Pinnacle Country Club in Rogers. The NWA Championship is so much more than a golf tournament, with something for everyone to enjoy and activities for fans of all ages. Daily tickets are only $10, and kids 17 and under get in free with a ticketed adult. Get your tickets today at NWAChampionship.com. At Kindle King, we're proud of over 4 decades of design. We're continuing the legacy of great creative design by combining our brands of Kindle King, Soapbox, and Shopcart. Together, these brands represent a new focus in marketing design, with individual attention to specific areas. Through our design expertise supported by a team of talented professionals, we showcase our best. We are Kindle King, we are Soapbox, we are Shopcart, we are design.
Hey, welcome back. We want to tell you about our friends at Enhanced Healthcare Wellness Institute. It's your source for holistic wellness and your healthy lifestyle changes. Located in Uptown Rogers, the staff at Enhanced Healthcare will target your specific health plan for wellness, from neuropathy treatment, primary care, weight loss, and so much more. You can count on the experts at Enhanced Healthcare Wellness Institute in Rogers. Arkansas's baseball schedule came out Thursday, and it is a doozy. The Razorbacks going to play a lot of really good teams, and you expect that from Razorback baseball. I mean, they schedule hard because I think they expect to win big. And Dave Van Horn's thought process is you put together a schedule that's going to challenge your team, and it's going to make your team ready to compete in the postseason. Obviously, Arkansas's had a couple of tough goes of it here at the end of the year, the last 2 years, losing to TCU in the regional a couple of years ago, losing to Kansas State and SEMO this last year. But this is a good program. It's a good team, and they think they've got a good team coming in 2025. And they're going to need it, Ethan, because you look at this schedule. I mean, it is a gauntlet as the Razorbacks just kind of go down the stretch in the SEC. These are their last 6 weekends of SEC play. I just want to read these here. It begins with a trip to Georgia on April 11th through the 13th. Then they have A&M here at home. That's Easter weekend, the 17th through the 19th. Then they go to Florida in Gainesville to end the month of April. May begins, they get Texas in Fayetteville. They go to LSU in Baton Rouge, and then they end the season with Tennessee. That is a tough schedule, and it doesn't even take into account some of these other games that they play. They go to Vanderbilt. They get South Carolina in here. They go to Ole Miss. This is the type of schedule that Who knows how they're going to compete, how they're going to fare with this schedule, but it's the type that gets you ready for the postseason. I think about Florida last year. They were 13-17 in the SEC, and people were saying they probably shouldn't be in the NCAA tournament. Well, they just played a really, really tough schedule, but it got them ready.
Yep. I mean, I think the word you used was doozy, and I don't know if that's strong enough looking up and down at this. I mean, the way they closed the year, that is one heck of a stretch going into the SEC tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I think that instantly what you do when you see this schedule, though, is your eyes kind of gaze down to the final two home series of Texas and Tennessee back-to-back. It doesn't get much more – I don't know. Those are going to be some great atmospheres.
Well,
I think the Texas series, number one, will have, just because it's Texas, you have the potential for just a phenomenal weekend. But then Tennessee with the whole Tony Vitello, they're the reigning national champs. That's two back-to-back amazing weekends of games.
But they get A&M in here on Easter weekend. A&M may be the best team in the country next year. They've got Jace Laviolette back. They've got Gavin Grohovac back. They've got Ryan Prager back. They've got Caden Kent back. And a number of others that were part of that team that took Tennessee down to the wire up in Omaha for the national championship. That's a really good team. LSU looks like a really good team. I think most of the people that I've talked to who follow this on a national basis think that LSU and Texas A&M probably will be 1-2 in some form going into the season in the preseason polls. Tennessee's not going to be far behind them. Tennessee, they recruit like crazy. They've got a great program there with Tony Vitello. Texas under Jim Schlossnagle in his first year in Austin. That's going to be an awfully good team. This is a tough schedule. Georgia has gone out this offseason and had one of the best off seasons of anybody in terms of transfer portal. And Arkansas has to go there to Athens. Dave Van Horn going against some of his former assistants. It's something we're used to seeing. You got Tony Vitello on the schedule. You got Wes Johnson on the schedule. Chris Curry from Little Rock will come up here for a couple of games in April. And then I think, the early games, we talked with Jared Schramm about this yesterday on our podcast, but the teams that they play down in Arlington, the first two teams they played there, Kansas State and TCU. And I don't know how many people will be – there are some players who are back from the TCU series a couple of years ago. Obviously, there's a number of players who are going to be back from what happened with K-State last year. But it's kind of like when Arkansas played Oregon State in Arlington last season. The memory is long. It had been 6 years since Oregon State beat Arkansas in the national championship in Omaha, and a lot of people felt like, hey, that was kind of a measure of revenge against the Beavers.
Yeah, I think that those first two games definitely going to be, if not the players, definitely the fan base will be, fighting old demons. Those were ugly games for the Razorbacks, and it's, you saw so many great careers ended by those two teams in the middle of just a golden stretch of the Razorbacks as far as like in the regular season winning championships. So I think that those two teams, the fan base would love to see them take a loss to the Razorbacks.
This is a great schedule. I mean, this is the type of schedule that if you don't think you've got a good team, it's the type of schedule that can get you in trouble with administration. I think we're past that point, obviously, with Dave Van Horn. But this is good. You can read about the whole schedule, by the way. It's on our website at wholehogsports.com. Also this week, Ethan, the softball schedule came out, and one of the interesting things that was on that was that OU's coming to town, OU's four-time reigning national champion softball program.
Yeah, it's funny. We're sitting over here talking about how much of a doozy that the baseball schedule is, and I'm looking at the softball one, and I'm like, they just one-upped them almost. There's not a single sport that the additions of Texas and OU impact the SEC more than softball. It just doesn't. They were 1 and 2 playing in the championship series 2 of the past 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
OU's they've won 4 consecutive national championships. And Arkansas this year in softball will play host OU, so that's going to be that's going to be an incredible atmosphere. But they also played the top 3 finishers from the SEC last year with Florida, who almost beat Oklahoma, almost ended the run. It was basically a play-in game for the national championship series, and Oklahoma beat them in extra innings. So Florida's really good, great program. And then they also played at Tennessee, who's won back-to-back SEC championships, and at Texas A&M, which is on the rise. And that's going to be an interesting series because Arkansas has a lot of players from the Houston area on their team, and so they'll know a lot of A&M players, I'm sure, in that program. So they get a gauntlet of a schedule too. I mean, it's not as many series in softball. You play 8, 4 home, 4 away. But the 8 that they got, there is not a single one of those teams that you look at and you think, oh, that's a for sure. I mean, you never do that in the SEC, but there's not even the one that you look at and you just like feel amazing about. Like I feel like usually you look at a schedule like, okay, well that team, at least there's that series right in the middle. They don't have that. This is a really tough schedule.
Courtney Neifel spoke about the softball team yesterday, or I'm sorry, 2 days ago, previewing kind of fall ball. You were listening. What'd you have to say?
Yeah, I think she's really, really optimistic about the freshmen on this team. I mean, and it shows them what she did in the transfer portal. Only went and got 2 players and didn't get a single pitcher. They've got 3 really good freshman pitchers coming in, and a couple of them are two-way players that she's expecting will get. Not expecting. She said you will see them swing the bat with Cam Harrison and with Peyton Burnham. She's from Oregon. Those 2, she's very confident you're going to see swinging the bat. So I think she really likes her freshmen. She's really liking her the experience they have at the top. They have a few players who have been around and have kind of proven themselves. So she's confident. Courtney Deifel's always confident though. So, but I think what the main thing is, it's very telling at roster construction how much she's placing trust in this freshman class. I think it's a really good freshman class. They had 2 that just got done playing in the for Team USA down at the I always forget the letters, the World Baseball Softball Under 18 Championship Series. 2 players just got done playing for them and showed out in it too. So they won the World Cup.
Both of these teams have got some outside competition coming up. Baseball is going to play. It hasn't been officially announced, but by all intents and purposes, this is known. October 11th and 12th, Oklahoma State's supposed to come here to Baum-Walker Stadium. And the softball team, that same weekend, they're going to go to Tulsa, and they'll take on TU and Oklahoma State there.
Yep, and that is – I mean, this is just the fall of Arkansas, Oklahoma State and everything. I just got done yesterday, women's basketball schedule released, and they play Oklahoma State. And I was like, here we go again. That Oklahoma State game in Tulsa, though, for the softball team will be a real barometer of kind of – I mean, things will change before season, but if you go and have a good showing against that program, they've been to 5 consecutive Women's College World Series. That, I think, will be a real indicator of how ready some of these freshmen are.
Of course, I'm having a moment here. Baseball, I wanted to mention this. Baseball, if you are in Fayetteville this weekend for the Razorback-UAB football game, you can head out to Baum-Walker Stadium. The expectation is that they're going to have a scrimmage this afternoon, Friday afternoon, somewhere mid-afternoon, don't know the exact time yet. And then the expectation is that they will not scrimmage Saturday, but there will also probably be a scrimmage on Sunday afternoon over at Baum, so you can get a couple of chances to watch the Razorback baseball team. It's a new team, a lot of new players. They got some players back, but I think they got something like 30 newcomers out of 51, so it should be interesting. I'm excited to get over there this weekend and watch the baseball team. Wasn't able to get over there when they scrimmaged the first time last week because we were in Oklahoma. Okay, when we come back, we're going to look ahead to Arkansas-UAB. We'll give you our weekend predictions and more, but first another word from our sponsors.
Taste, sip, sample, and discover the very best restaurants and chefs Northwest Arkansas has to offer at the Bite Experience at the LPGA, a unique culinary experience on site at the Northwest Arkansas Championship. Tickets are available Friday, September 27th through Sunday, September 29th, offering access to the best golf viewing and food and beverage samples from over 30 local restaurants. You don't want to miss this. Tickets are available for $45 a day. Get yours before they sell out at BiteNWA.com. At Kindle King, we're proud of over 4 decades of design. We're continuing the legacy of great creative design by combining our brands of Kindle King, Soapbox, and Shopcart. Together, these brands represent a new focus in marketing design, with individual attention to specific areas. Through our design expertise supported by a team of talented professionals, we showcase our best. We are Kindle King, we are Soapbox, we are Shopcart, we are design.
Hey, welcome back. We want to tell you about our friends at Bentonville Glass, serving their community since 1971. Committed, professional, and versatile. If you're looking for a quality leader in Northwest Arkansas or looking for skilled craftsmanship, look no further than Bentonville Glass for all your glass market needs with the highest quality products. You can come by and see them right now at 507 South Main in Bentonville or online at bentonvilleglass.com. Ethan with me for another segment now. We're going to look ahead to this weekend's games. Arkansas-UAB, we'll start there. We'll give our predictions a little bit later. If you come to Razorback Stadium this weekend, you're going to notice a little bit different aesthetic, should we say. There's going to be a Walmart logo on the field. There's going to be a Tyson Foods logo on the field. This is part of the rule change that was put in place by the NCAA earlier this year that's going to allow corporate sponsorships on the field moving forward. These have not been allowed for regular season games, for on-campus games. You do see them on the field for bowl games, like the Outback Bowl or the Chick-fil-A Bowl or whatever the case may be. You'll see it there for bowl games, but now it's available for all games. And this is something that a lot of schools are going to take advantage of as we march toward the day, be it next year or maybe a little bit later, depending on how this House settlement goes, where they're going to be sharing revenue with athletes. And so they have to figure out new forms of revenue to help offset some of the media revenue that they're giving to these athletes. Doesn't look too tacky based on the renderings that we've seen. I mean, it's maybe I shouldn't even say too tacky. Honestly, based on the rendering, and who knows if that's to scale, but it's almost kind of hard to see it.
Yeah, and I think that for me especially, I mean, I've gone to so many Friday night games growing up my whole life, Friday night football games. All these high schools will have logos, on the field.
Yeah.
And some of those look horrible. Some of those are just way too big, the logos, or not a great design logo. These looked, from the renderings I saw, they looked fine. I thought that it looked pretty just seamless. Like, it's not in your face, but it's also, you're going to notice it.
There's more corporate sponsorship logos coming, I think. It's probably only a matter of time, whether it's next year or maybe 2-3 years from now, where we see patches, I think, on the jerseys of the college teams, similar to what we see across most professional sports. It's in NBA, it's in Major League Baseball, it's in NHL. NFL, it has not made its way to the games yet, but they do have, or many teams have, patches on their practice jerseys. Probably only a matter of time before we see that in college, because as I've said many times, college football is just, the NFL 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that it's always interesting watching the NBA games and seeing what there's like a lot of them. There's a lot of big name brands that you'll see on people's jerseys, but then you'll see some teams that you're like, what on earth? How did they get this?
Like, who is that?
Yeah, how'd they get this sponsorship? So I think it'll be funny if colleges do start adapting, these patches on their jerseys in the game. Like, we're going to see some crazy sponsors, I feel like, across all sports. I mean, what do you think about, an Arkansas State? Like, who's Arkansas State going to have on their jersey? I feel like it's going to be just some random.
The other thing that you have to take into consideration is, are you able to sell a jersey patch that may have some sort of confliction with one of your other primary sponsors? So say, for instance, like Arkansas State, they play, I think it's Centennial Bank Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
What if Arvest wants to come along and put, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. And
how that might work.
It's already coming up with NIL. So many athletes you'll see getting endorsements for, another athletic wear brand, and their school is a Nike school, and they're out here wearing Puma it's a lot of confliction there.
Did you see the Pac-12 news this week?
I did. I saw that Fresno State, I guess that by getting their own Bud Light, it made a big enough impression on the Pac-12. They wanted to invite him in.
Well, cue the Undertaker meme, coming back from the dead. That's what the Pac-12 is doing. I mean, I think people had thought the Pac-12 is gone. There is no more Pac-12. It's just a faint memory. And now here they come. They're trying to make a comeback. Oregon State and Washington State basically hold all of the rights to the Pac-12. I'm not exactly sure how this got resolved. There were some legal wrangling earlier this year about whether or not Oregon State and Washington State got to retain all of the finances from the Pac-12, like during the 23-24 year. Like, for instance, do they get to keep all the NCAA tournament money? Do they get to keep the bowl money? Do they get to keep the media revenue? And I'm not sure how that was resolved, but I I think the initial ruling was that they would. And, these teams that are leaving, Colorado, UCLA, Washington, Oregon, and so on, they weren't going to get to see any of that. So Oregon State and Washington State, basically their leadership, they're running the Pac-12 right now, along with there is a conference commissioner in place too. But obviously there's really nothing for that commissioner to oversee other than what's good for Washington State and what's good for Oregon State, and ultimately what might be good for the league down the line. Boise State's coming. Colorado State's coming. You mentioned Fresno State. And who am I missing?
Who all of you said?
Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State,
San Diego
and
State.
San Diego State. The Aztecs are coming. So that gives them 6. They're not – I also think it's kind of funny how we're still calling them the Pac-12. And I know the number doesn't really mean anything, but it's like it feels more like the Pac-2 with 4 in rating. They
got halfway to the 12 with this.
They need to get to 8. Yeah. They need to get to 8 to retain their FBS status, and they have to do that by the 2026 season. Basically, there's a 2-year grace period that's in place where they have to add 6 more members other than Oregon State and Washington State. And my question is, all of these teams are coming from the Mountain West. Wouldn't it just make more sense to merge the Mountain West with Oregon State and Washington State and somehow have some sort of new conference coalition between the two of them?
That's what I was going to say. It seems like that's just the trajectory this is taking, is just the Mountain West kind of merging into the 2-team Pac-12. You look at it, and it makes sense, in my opinion. I mean, a lot of those schools, it's a win for them because, the Pac-12 has such name recognition. It makes instantly, in my opinion, like Boise State seem a lot bigger that they're about to be Pac-12. I mean, it's technically not because what's happened to the Pac-12, but it seems like an upgrade from a standpoint of your branding and your marketing that they'd be now a Pac-12 school. And I think that maybe some of the next schools that you could see, like I think of UNLV. I feel like it'd be a good fit for them.
That's another Mountain West team.
Yep. And then I guess the question then just to ask is, could they get any outside, schools?
That's the thing
to lure them in.
I don't know that they're going to be able to go outside the Mountain West to get anybody unless, and I think this is a huge unless because I don't think it'll happen, unless, say, like Cal and Stanford have an, oh, my God, what have we done moment playing everybody 3,000 miles away, and they say, can we come back? Mm-hmm. If they can come back, then maybe they can get somebody outside the Mountain West, but I don't really see anybody else because it's a region where there just are not a lot of colleges. I mean, look at the Mountain West. That thing stretches from Hawaii to Wyoming, right? Mm-hmm. So there's really just not a whole lot of teams that are in that geographic footprint if they want to go, if they want to stay somewhat geographic. And I say somewhat because I full well know that already from San Diego to Oregon State's a long trip so it feels like they're just going to have to raid the Mountain West.
It's just funny because it makes sense that just Pac-12 dies, just those 2 schools go to the Mountain West. But it seems we're just doing this in reverse, and it might be a long, drawn-out process. It's funny, though, the Pac-12, if you go to their social media, like their Twitter, X, whatever you call it, account, the header photo is just a line, and then on one side's Washington State's logo, on the other side is Oregon State. It's just funny how much those 2 teams are just, you said, they're running it.
I mean, UNLV, that seems like a team that would make a lot of sense to go to the Pac-12. And then the question becomes, what happens to the Mountain West? I'll tell you something that would be interesting. If the Mountain West, say they go down to, I think they got 12 teams right now, let's say they go down to 6, would they go to a North Dakota State and a South Dakota State and a Montana and an Idaho and say, hey, you've got really good football programs. Would you like to come up and try your hand at the big time? And then what would those schools say? Because, they got it going pretty good right now.
Yeah.
And it's a much greater financial commitment when you move from FCS to FBS. So those are some thoughts that we have on that.
It's crazy the domino effect of all of this, that just these mega conferences clustering together have just it impacts everybody.
If they are willing to take a non-football playing school, I've always thought Gonzaga would be a great fit in the Pac.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would. I don't know that they'd want to do it. They've got a pretty good, situation going right now in the West Coast Conference. But it would certainly elevate their basketball profile. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what Mark Few's done there is pretty remarkable.
So you've written at our website, wholehogsports.com, about basically just kind of keys to this game this week. Tell us about, a couple of those.
Well, I didn't write the keys. Christina
Okay.
wrote keys. I wrote about UAB, though. I
There
can
you
tell you
go.
some things just to know about them. I mean, Jacob Zeno, their quarterback, I think Aaron earlier in the show talked about him a little bit, and just what he's done. He's a sixth-year guy. This is the second week in a row that Arkansas has played a quarterback that's, you never heard of sixth and seventh-year players, but now they exist. He started at Baylor, and he was actually in his class a four-star. He was the number 8 quarterback. So I think he's a guy who you definitely have to be a little concerned with him. He has a really good completion percentage. It seems like he plays the short game really well, short intermediate game, just those simple completions. He actually was second nationally last year in completion percentage, but that was last year. This year, their offensive line is really struggling to protect him. Against ULM, he got sacked 5 times in one game. So I think something you've seen from Arkansas so far is, they're doing a good job clogging the running lanes, and the defensive line is doing it large, like a good job, but it's like there's more to be desired from creating sacks, tackles for loss. I think that this is a game that maybe people are waiting to see if Landon Jackson, which he's done great in run defense, he just hasn't gotten any sacks yet. I think this is the type of game that I think you could maybe see him wake up a little as far as in the sack department. I'd be interested to see, how this UAB O-line, if they can't hold up against ULM, how are they going to hold up against the Razorbacks?
All right, let's get into predictions now. Kind of an interesting week in the SEC. This is really the last week, Ethan, where there's not the majority of the games are non-conference. Beginning next week, we're going to start seeing a lot more conference games. There are some conference games, and we'll discuss those this week, and there are a lot early in the morning. It begins, Alabama goes to Wisconsin in Camp Randall Stadium. The Crimson Tide ranked number 4. They had a scare last week against South Florida. Both teams are 2-0. This is going to be the Fox Big Noon kickoff game.
Yeah, it's just hard for me to go against Alabama. Maybe this is just the post-Nick Saban effect just my view of Alabama. It's as long as they have the type of playmakers that they have and the recruits that they have. I know that last week their game against South Florida left a lot more to be desired from them, but I'm not particularly impressed with Wisconsin either. I think maybe if Alabama was playing a little bit better of it, like Wisconsin historically, this would be such a big game. When you look at their schedule this year, and they beat Western Michigan by 2 scores and South Dakota by 2 scores. It just doesn't impress me much. I think that Alabama will go in and win.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I think Alabama's 2-0 is more impressive than Wisconsin's 2-0. And until Alabama under Kalen DeBoer convinces me otherwise, I don't really pick against Alabama. It has proven to be a pretty bad philosophy to do that, so I'm going to go with Wisconsin in this game, although it would surprise me if the Badgers won it, because this is a different Alabama team, and they did not look great for 3 quarters last week. College game day is going to be in Columbia, South Carolina. Kind of an odd choice, if you ask me. LSU comes to town. The Tigers are ranked number 16, South Carolina unranked, but LSU's got 1 loss. South Carolina's undefeated and coming off that big win over Kentucky.
Yeah, I learned my lesson last year with LSU to overreact at the beginning to a loss, and I remember I think it was same juncture of the season, week 3, I believe, week 3 or week 4, they went and played Mississippi State, and I picked Mississippi State to win that just because I was going off the LSU loss and Mississippi State, what it had done at that point, and I think at the end of the day, it's still LSU. I mean, I think they're going to be able to figure it out against South Carolina. South Carolina doesn't impress me still. I think last Saturday's game, it was less about South Carolina proving itself to me, more about Kentucky
getting exposed.
Yeah, showing what it is.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with you there. I think LSU wins this game. I think LSU might be a little bit better than they've shown thus far, and it's still to be seen how good Southern Cal is. Maybe that's a really good Southern Cal team they lost to at the beginning of the season. I'm with you. I watched South Carolina Old Dominion, was not impressed at all with the Gamecocks. So I'm going to take LSU. That's a morning game that typically, I don't know if it favors the road team, but it certainly helps them. It feels like another morning game. The only top 25 matchup of the week is number 24 Boston College goes to number 6 Missouri. The Tigers, they have not been challenged. They haven't been scored on yet in this season. They're undefeated. Boston College also undefeated, though, including that road win over Florida State on Labor Day.
Yeah, I think in this instance for me, I'm picking Missouri, and it's more based on that I know what they have from last year. It wouldn't shock me if Boston College makes this a game, but that offense for Missouri has so much talent on it. I just don't see them losing to Boston College in this one.
If you had Bill O'Brien and Eli Drinkwitz to choose from as a coach, who are you picking?
Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, I am too.
But if I'm choose Missouri's roster over Boston College,
this is my upset. This is my upset pick this week. I think BC can go into Missouri. I don't know if they will. They're a 17-point underdog, or at least they were the last time I checked. Remember, though, you and I were talking about this. Missouri went to BC 3 years ago, and BC won that game 41-34 in overtime. And you made a good point. You said it kind of feels like that Arkansas-Rutgers series where you look up and it's like, well, how did you get swept by that team?
Yeah.
I would not be surprised to see BC go into Missouri. I'm a big believer that if you challenge yourself, it makes a difference, especially early in the year. Again, Missouri hasn't been challenged. They haven't played anybody. They played Murray State and they played Buffalo. Say what you want about Florida State. I think Florida State is still got a talented team. It's hard to go in to win at Tallahassee. Boston College did it. I think they could go into Missouri, and I'm gonna make that my upset pick.
Yeah, and I think that what I'm kind of looking most at in this game is Missouri still hasn't given up a point this year, and it's always telling how a defense responds to adversity. For the first time, I'm willing to say Boston College is not going to get shut out, and I'd be interested to see if Boston College can get an early score or two against Missouri, how that defense holds up, because they haven't been tested, they haven't been put in any adverse situations yet. So could this be the first time?
I like the BC quarterback. I'll tell you one other thing. Missouri so much last year, they relied on that quarterback or on the running back, Cody Schrader. He's not there anymore. Brady Cook's gonna have to make some plays with his arm. Tulane goes to Oklahoma. The Sooners are still ranked at number 15, but they were scared last week against Houston. This is kind of a trendy upset pick that I'm hearing a lot of people make this week. Is Tulane going to Norman to win the game?
Yeah, it is a trendy upset pick. I'm not gutsy enough to make it, though. I entertained it. I was not impressed by Oklahoma last week. I mean, they were not just playing bad. They were making dumb mental mistakes. There was a guy who got so angry at the end of the game, he took off his helmet, and it stopped the clock whenever otherwise it would have run out. And Houston had it wasn't a good chance. I think they got the ball back with like 1 second or something stupid to try the backyard football play. But that's what didn't impress me is if you're already not playing well, keep a cool enough head to where you aren't that literally could have lost this team the game. And so but Tulane also, it's one of those things. I saw them test Kansas State this week, and I think that impressed me. But at the end of the day, I think OU's that type of team that they have enough talent and enough coaching that they should be able to figure things out.
If Tulane still had Willie Fritz, I might say, hey, they go in and win. You know where Willie Fritz is now? He's at Houston. And he didn't get it done last week in Norman. I think OU wins just because they got scared last week. I will say this. Jackson Arnold is no Dylan Gabriel. It may be a really long year for the Sooners, their first year in the SEC. Texas A&M goes to Florida. The game's in the Swamp. And Billy Napier firing watch seems like any given Sunday he might get the boot. A&M, I don't know how I feel about them. I mean, coming out of first week, I thought, okay, hey, I thought they played well against Notre Dame, but then Notre Dame didn't look very good at all in week 2. This is an interesting one. This feels like a hard game to pick.
Yeah, this one, I went back and forth with it. I'm picking Texas A&M, though. Florida feels to me in a weird, different way how I was with Arkansas last year, as far as it's a game that they could win, and they're playing at home. But just my gut tells me don't pick them. They do something that's they're gonna do something to lose the game. Billy Napier has a freshman quarterback come in their last game and plays really well after Graham Mertz struggled in the opener against Miami, Florida, and now they're at this crossroads of with Mertz back. He was in concussion protocol. Who do we play? And you just got to pick one.
Yep.
You just got to pick one. And I think that this whole just hesitancy with that is kind of that puts Florida in a nutshell.
If you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. That's the old saying. I've got Florida. I think Florida somehow figures out a way to prolong this thing for a little bit. The one I don't like Connor Wigman in Colin Klein's offense, and maybe he changes my mind as he's in it further through the year. It just doesn't seem like a real strong fit for him. But I think Florida might pull this out. They're at home. A&M, it's their first big road trip with Mike Elko as their head coach. I think Florida could win this. The question is, are the players still gathered around Billy Napier? Because if they're not, if they've let go of the rope, we've seen in the past where talent flies out the window at that point. Ole Miss goes to Wake Forest. The Rebels are number 5. They've won their games this year by a combined 125 points.
Yeah, but it's another. I don't care about how many points it's been because they've not tested themselves at all either. But Wake Forest, meanwhile, has lost to Virginia, so that's about all you got to know with there. I'm picking Ole Miss by a lot.
It is on the road, but there's a huge talent gap. I think Ole Miss goes there and wins that by at least 2, maybe 3 scores or more. Georgia goes to Kentucky. I don't know if there's anything left to say there.
Yeah, no, I mean, this could be an FCS type score.
If you thought South Carolina winning by 25 was a lot, just wait until you see what Georgia does on Kroger Field on Saturday, because I think the Bulldogs are going to be rolling through the Kentucky Wildcats. All right, that brings us to our game, Arkansas and UAB. The way we do these games is that obviously we think Arkansas is going to win, so the question becomes, Ethan, can they cover this 24.5-point spread?
Yes, if ULM, which went 2-10 last year, lost its final 10 games. If ULM can beat UAB 32-6, Arkansas can cover that spread.
I think they probably can too. I think there's going to be some excitement about the team being at home for the first time. No offense to Little Rock, but they're on campus for the first time. They're in their home stadium for the first time. I think there's some I don't know. I think that plays into this game some. Defensively, they were so good against Oklahoma State last week, and they've heard how good they were against Oklahoma State last week, that you just hope they don't have a little bit of a letdown this week against an offense, like you said, did not have a very good week last week at Monroe. I think that gets counterbalanced some by the fact that they lost the game to Oklahoma State, and they're probably pretty mad about that, and they want to come out and do something about it. The offense, the expectation is they'll probably have another big game. I don't know if they'll go over 600 yards again, but to this point, nobody has stopped Arkansas except for Arkansas. I would expect them to have a big game on both sides of the ball. Maybe the biggest question is who lines up at kicker if they have to kick a field goal, and what do special teams look like.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, the game within the game is just keeping an eye out on some of those sort of things. A few of the injury notes with, Hudson Clark, Sam Pittman said very, very doubtful. So this is one of those games, whoever Arkansas puts out there, on your 2 deep should be more talented than UAB. It's more just trying to figure out some of those, what you do when you don't have this guy or who's going to be your kicker. But I would look for Arkansas in this one to have a good showing. They've really played complimentary football. They've just made, like an Oklahoma State game, they just made too many mistakes.
You got a bold prediction?
I did make a bold prediction the first week, and I was right, so I said I might not ever make one again.
Go ahead, make one.
Jaquindon Jackson, 3rd straight 100-yard rushing game.
I've got Isaiah Satania with at least a 40-yard punt return. I think that, the athletes show themselves up on special teams when there's a big talent discrepancy like I think we might see in this game on Saturday. If Cross Johnson can get out of Satania's way, I think Satania can have a pretty big return in this game.
Wait, you said bold prediction. Me picking Jaquindon Jackson for 100 yards isn't even bold, so let me go bolder. Bobby Petrino.
Pick it up a notch.
I'm going to crank it up a notch. But if I'm wrong on this, then that one was my bold prediction. Bobby Petrino puts another top 10 offensive yardage performance.
Well, it would have to be more than 648 yards for that to happen, because at Oklahoma State, that was the 10th highest yardage
That's what I'm saying.
total.
They're getting 650 against UAB. UAB was terrible defensively a year ago. I know you can change a roster. You can't say Arkansas was terrible offensively last year and assess this team, but they didn't make enough changes to really wow me. So,
hey, we appreciate you being with us. We're going to have a lot from this game this weekend between Arkansas and UAB on our website at wholehogsports.com. We'll be back with another podcast Monday to look back at the game and start our look ahead to the Razorbacks and the Auburn Tigers down on the plains next weekend. Hope you have a great weekend, everyone.